Allie. Join me as I show you how to do this Sea Box Bracelet, which is going to feature some beads from our subscription treasure box and also beads from our warehouse. So if you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description for the exact list of what materials you need. Gather them up on your bead on it board and let's get ready to create. So to start this Sea Box Bracelet, we are going to be using a collection of beads. The beads that are going to stay as our primary beads to hold everything together are 8/0 seed beads and 2mm pearls. If you don't have 2mm pearls on hand, you can switch it out for 11/0 seed beads if you would like. We are going to then be using 4mm, 6mm, or 8mm beads for each of the components. Here in the sample piece, which are used from beads from our June treasure box, we have our 4mm crystal bicones and 8mm faceted check glass rounds. I'm going to also be using 4mm bicones, but switching it up to 6mm gemstones to show the difference in how the pattern looks with different size beads and how versatile it is. The first thing you want to do is get ready with a size 11 or 12 needle, because those 2mm pearls are tiny, and you want some DragonThread size 6 or size 8. Black would go wonderfully with this as well too. I have green and about 5 feet. At the end of the thread, I have an 8/0 seed bead that is working as a stop bead and some extra thread at the end to be able to attach my clasp guard and clasp when we get to it. And these are magnets. Super strong, hard to open. All right, so to begin, we're going to begin with our first right angle unit. We're going to be doing this series of right angle units as we do the bracelet. You may not even realize that you're doing right angle when you're doing it. So you're learning right angle weave. Good for you. First thing we're going to do is start out by adding 1, 2, 3 of our 8/0 seed beads and 1 of our 2mm beads. We're going to let that drop down next to our stop beads, and I want you to sew through all of your beads, including that 2mm bead, one more time. So your thread and needle should be coming out the 2mm bead. And you want to take that down to that stop bead. Mine decided to pop up to the top here, and then pull that extra thread through. From here, we are going to get ready to add our first beads for our sets. We're going to be adding our 4mm bicones first in that right angle weave pattern, utilizing some 8/0 seed beads in between. When your needle and thread are coming out of the 2mm pearl, your pattern is always going to be the same. You want to add 1 more of your 2mm pearls onto your thread and needle and let that drop down, as well as 4 bicones with an 8/0 seed bead after each. So you're gathering a series of 4mm bicone, 8/0 seed bead, 4mm bicone, and you're making sure that after you add 4 of them, that you have the 8/0 at the end. Let those all drop down next to your starter bead there. From here, take your needle and thread back through your 4mm round, your first 8/0, and your second 4mm round, or sorry, 4mm bicone rather. Give a nice tight pull so you don't see any extra thread showing. From here, every time you're between one of your 4mm bicones or your 6mm or your 8mm, you're going to pick up a series of 3 of your pearls. So you want to pick up 3 pearls and put those onto your needle. And these can be a little tricky because they have tiny little holes. Once you have those 3 pearls on, you're going to skip over the 8/0 seed bead and sew through the next 4mm bead. So that's getting me the alternate side there of that right angle unit with those 3 beads. We're going to repeat this again. 3 beads go on. 1, 2, and 3. Skip over the 8/0 seed bead and go into the 4mm bead and out. Here we're going to connect it back to our starting 2mm pearl. We already put one on before we did this little right angle weave section, and we have one that's attached as our right angle weave beginner unit. Add one more 2mm pearl, and then you're going to sew through those other 2mm pearls that are lined up. The 2mm pearls are always going to sit over top of your 8OC beads. From here then, you're going to sew through your next 4mm bead. And as you sew through the 4mm bead and come out, you can see you just have one more of your corners to do. We're going to pick up and do 3 more 2mm beads. And then after you do your 2mm pearls, sew through your 4mm bead, and then you want your needle and thread to come out through that top center 2 that you added originally as you were going around this right angle unit. After your thread and needle exit that 2mm pearl at the top, we're going to do our next connection point. Our next connection point is going to be an 8OC bead, followed by one of our pearls, followed by an 8OC bead. This right angle unit then goes into the top of the 2mm bead that your thread is currently coming out of and circles up that right angle unit. And that's your connection. From here, we're going to repeat the same exact steps that we did on the 2mm, but we're going to use the 6mm bead. I'm going to get my thread and needle to come out through that second 2mm bead, the rightmost side of that right angle unit. And then once you're out there, you're ready to start again. Now you can see I've progressed, adding already a bunch of the 6s, showing the difference between using the 6mm versus the 8mm and how much closer or further apart. Also remember, you can skip the connection point, but I thought it would be good to show you now, looking at the 6s already done, just that refresher, how you're doing this. So you're coming out of that connection spot, you have on one pearl, and then your 4 primary beads, which are going to be our 6s, followed by an 8OC bead each. Take your needle and thread back through the first 6mm, first 8O, second 6mm. Remember, in the case of the 4s, it's a 4mm. Popping out here, here's where you're going to pick up those tiny 2s, adding 1, 2, and 3 of those onto your needle and thread. Skip over the 8O and sew through the 6. This may give you vibes of the anytime or the all the time. It's nice to see how you can use different sizes with the same pattern and the same bead. So it doesn't matter if I'm using a 4, a 6, or an 8. I'm using 1 8O originally in the middle, and then I'm using 3 2mm beads around the outer edge. After you have 2 of your peaks here, you're going to connect back to your center peak, adding 1 of your 2mm pearls, and then going back to that connection 2mm pearl, sewing through that 2mm pearl will bring this right angle weave component to connect fully. Go down through the second pearl then, as well as out through the 6mm bead. Add 3 more of your 2mm pearls here, and then that gets us finished with this component. Once again, we need to get to the outer edge, so I'm going to go up through that first 2 that I put on in this component, and then out through the top 2 that's on that diamond. From here, those connection points always are the same, adding on an 8O, 1 2mm, 1 8, back through that 2 that your thread is currently coming out of, up through the 8OC bead, and out the 2. This time I'm going to go ahead and do 1 more unit of my 4mm, and then we're going to get ready to put on our clasp. Once you have your bracelet completed, it is time to add your clasp. You can do toggle clasps, you can do buttons, kind of up to you. And I'm ending my project exactly the way that I started, with 3 8/0s just because they fit a little bit better and a wire guard. I've taken off and done the first one here, and now I'm coming out of that last 8/0, which was my first bead, and I'm going to show you how to add the clasp. This is one of the clasp guarded magnetic clasps. I love this. Hold on, ready? Such a fun sound. All right, so coming out here, you're going to add your wire guard. I like to use the wire guard with this clasp in particular because it's not soldered, it just has the loops open. So you'll definitely want wire guards with this one. You're going up through the one side of the wire guard, down through the other side of the wire guard, adding on your clasp, which will go onto that wire guard, and coming back through that same 8/0 opposite direction, so the wire guard sits right on top. Anytime you have a clasp or closure, wire guard, no wire guard, you want to make sure that you are stringing through it multiple times. You never, ever, ever just want one strand of thread going through the clasp. Why? Because your clasp is the area that's going to get the most wear and tear. You're taking it on, you're taking it off. That's where you're going to have the most going through. So I'm going through mine, you can see 3 times, and then we're going to knot off the thread and burn it down along the project. The 2mm pearls here at the end are tiny, so I do not go down into those in between. Most right angle weave, I'll drop into the right angle weave a little bit between some of those layers. Going into that 8/0 then, I'm now going to come down on the project. If you have trouble getting your needle through that 2mm bead, don't force it. You can kind of hop over and go into the other one because you do not want to break it. You can break that one. No one will see it. Just take your needle and thread and go through that side bead, or you can add a little 8/0 there. Once you're through there, go ahead and bring your thread and needle down into the interior of the project, going through, bring it out in an area, and then we'll get ready to knot it off. To knot it off, you're going to go underneath the bridge thread, or the thread that connects between the 2 beads, making a loop. I sew through that loop 1 time. I sew through the loop 2 times. Nice tight pull, and that knot is nice and sturdy. You can sew through and bring your needle and thread out another bead after. Pull that knot even tighter so it goes inside of the beads. Grab your thread burner, heat it up, burn it, and then take the burner right on top of the thread and burn it flat against the project to finish up this Sea Box bracelet. It would work wonderfully as a necklace as well, and is a beautiful design whether or not you're using your 4mm and 8mm from your subscription box or switching it out to some 4 and 6mm. Thanks so much for joining me, Potomac Beaders, and learning and making this Sea Box bracelet, a version of right angle weave using the exact same beads no matter the size of the box and component that you're making it. Remember, you can switch out for different sizes, and I can't wait to see your versions in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more inspirational videos from us here at Potomac Beads.